commonly known as Al Bielek. Original family name is Edward Cameron. I have been involved in the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk project, time travel, alien connections of the Montauk project, and some other projects, all of which have been secret over the years, most of which have never been declassified. I wound up in the 28th century, and this was in the time period of 2749 to 2751 AD. Talk about changes in civilization, society, and everything else. It was drastically changed from what we saw in 2137, as this is now 600 years later. The cities were enormous, the cities were beautiful. They had ground-based cities, much as we have always had them, but they also had something else, floating cities. Floating cities, due to anti-gravity techniques being perfected sufficiently that they could float an entire city, which was perhaps not as large as any of our current cities. It was round, or very nearly round, but it floated on this platform, and they could move the city any place they wanted, remaining floating in the air, 4,000 or 5,000 feet above the ground perhaps, or a little less, depending on what they wanted. But the size of the city was vertical rather than horizontal, 2,200 stories high. That's about 2.5 miles. The cities could move anywhere on the planet. Basically, they stayed hovering and floating. If they didn't like a particular location, they'd move somewhere else. There wasn't that much traffic in moving cities, I can assure you, because the world population in that era, the 28th century, was only 500 million, and I was instructed later that was where they had held it for centuries. There would be no more than approximately 500 million population. Some of the features of this, let's start from the political standpoint. As I learned, all of these cities, whether they're ground-based cities, which the majority were, because they had to do manufacturing, they had to have agriculture and various other things to supply the needs of civilization. But all of them, whether floating or ground-based, were rather interesting in their governmental form. They had essentially no government. There was no government as we know it today. There was no money, there was no banks, there was no political jurisdictions, and it resolved down to what would be best called a city-state structure, where the city is the state, and any other cities from that one are independent and operate in their own independent manner. So that was the major change there. There was no elected government, there was no appointed government, there was no government as we had ever seen it in the past. As I found out, each city was run by an intelligent computer, synthetic intelligence, synthetic consciousness, a highly radioactive crystalline structure. Who built them, I had no idea. Nobody seemed to know, but they've been there for hundreds of years. And this computer ran the entire city. There were guidelines set down, there were law books, but no courts. There were guidelines set down as to how you're to behave, what your parameters were. Within these parameters, anything went. Anything was not considered kosher within this realm, this parameter limit, would be expressed as a yellow zone, i.e. a zone that you don't want to go into and you don't want to become involved in that type of behavior. If you got out into that area, you were given an invite for a reprimand to the computer, which there was one in every city, running each city. You would literally be called in for, shall we say, an interview or an audience with the computer, and you would be advised that you had broken the law, but it wasn't considered a felony, it was a misdemeanor. And such. If you were judged guilty, you were sent off to one of the work camps for whatever purpose they did in the work camps. Very much like today, I presume, where any kind of labor, menial or otherwise, had to be done was done. And that was compulsory, that was not voluntary. If you were called in because you had gone outside the yellow zone into what is called the red zone, which is basically what you would today call a felony offense, you were immediately called in for an interview. You were examined, looked at, talked to, and if the computer at that point thought that you were rehabilitable, that you could learn again to be sociable and within the social bounds of normalcy, you were given one more chance. If the computer decided that you were not capable of fitting into society, you were terminated right then and there. Now, there were other people who didn't feel like they could fit into the society, but had not yet committed any of the so-called offenses. Literally, they were allowed to leave. The word was, if you don't like it here, go live somewhere else. Go out in the boonies if you want, live as a hermit. We don't care. And many did. I do not know what percentage. I was told that quite a lot of people had left the cities and gone out in the boondocks. Whether they formed communities or not, I never did find out. If you weren't required to work, which no one was required to, other than their social obligation, which was well inculcated into the kids, that you had an obligation to contribute to society, to pay for what you have been using and had inherited, for which no money was involved. A sort of credit system was still functional, but otherwise, except for fairly large credit purchases, if that is the right term, they didn't really keep track of very much. It was considered quite free as long as you were able to make some contributions and nobody overloaded the system with demands. That happened very seldom, that there was an overload of demand for goods and services. So as a result of that, there was very little abuse of the system. Now, in this period of time, talking with many people, making friends, I had a number of questions. Who built this computer system? That was my first and foremost question. Who maintains it?
My name is Gerald Gardner, and I have a story to tell you. I have been to the future. My story begins in the year 1977, when I began working for the British government. I moved up the ranks, and by 10 years later, the year 1988, I was deemed the best candidate for an experimental technology. A technology that had not been tested before. I was to be the first one. Upon being notified, I began training, doing a series of tests, and soon came the date of the final test. To send a human being to the future and back successfully. If they could do this, they would have great power over our society. And they knew that they must perfect this technology before any other country does. In 1988, it was determined that I was to be sent to the year 2300, to the 24th century AD. I was to be paid a gross sum of 2.3 million pounds. I accepted. This is more money than I could ever imagine before. And I knew it could help my family greatly. What I'm telling you are details that I have not even disclosed to my closest family members. And what I'm telling you is true. I understand there will be people who don't believe what I'm telling you. But I can assure you that what I'm telling you is true.
The machine was a large spheroid object. I would estimate around 30 feet in diameter. The object was to be placed on the bed and rolled into a compartment within the machine. I laid on the bed, and they slid me into this compartment. They then started up the machine. I began to lose consciousness. Initially, I thought I had died. I didn't see a thing. And I didn't feel anything at all. But soon enough, I began regain my consciousness. And I began to look around. I was no longer in a machine. Now I was within a large city. I could see large buildings that went up for what appeared to be miles, and above me I saw floating cities. By the 24th century, anti-gravity technology had been protected to the degree that they could levitate an entire city. The cities were floating around 6,000 feet off of the ground level on which I was standing, and the main benefit of having these levitating cities is that they could be moved anywhere they wanted. They could be moved anywhere on the planet. The city I find myself in was a ground city. And ground cities took up most of the planet. In the 24th century, these large floating cities fulfilled most of the needs of civilization. They manufactured all the goods and then produced all the agricultural needs of this civilization in the future. And these ground cities were much more polluted than the aerial floating city that were above. I'm going to reveal to you what I saw in the future.
So deeply about we were in the past. Here are my findings from the future. And here is what the year 2300 was really like. And is really going to be like. There was essentially no government. Each city was independently operated. There were no elected officials. The cities were governed by a computer. I asked a great many questions about this computer, and I asked, was it malfunctioned? They told me that there was no chance of any malfunction. And this computer was much smarter and much more advanced than any person could possibly be. there was no money and no banks in the future. There was no laws in which each citizen's actions had to fall within those guidelines. If a citizen were to break or participate in actions that fell outside of these guidelines, they would be escorted to a meeting with a branch of one of the computers that governed their city. If they were deemed guilty, they would be sent temporarily to a work camp, in which they would fulfill the lower needs of civilization. If a citizen were to break several of these guidelines, or they did an action that would be deemed as severe, they would be escorted to a meeting with the governing computer. And if this computer deemed that they were able to integrate again with society, they would be given one more chance. If the computer deemed them not able to integrate, their consciousness would be uploaded to a computer, in which they would live out the rest of their lives. This was the most severe punishment you could get in the future. If there was a person that did not fit into society, they would be allowed to leave. There was no law forcing them to stay. They could leave society if they so wanted to. In fact, I heard about several stories from people who have gone off and lived in the wilderness in small groups outside of society. Now this was not a very nice life. They could live a much better one by integrating with the society.